And just like that, pre-season testing is finally over. The next time we see these cars, they will be in Melbourne. But before we get onto that, we've got a lot of talking to get through. Who's looking good and who's got a lot of improving needed ahead of the first race of the season. I've got the full crew with me today, and don't worry, we will be pushing Jolyon Palmer for a ranking at the end of this. Ruth, Lawrence, Jolyon, thank you so much for joining me. Shall we start right at the end of the paddock with the new team Cadillac? Ruth, where are you putting them at the moment? How do you think they've dealt with these 2 weeks in Bahrain?
Well, it depends if we're comparing them to every other team or compared to what they actually are, which is a brand new team. Because first off, I think we have to say well done Cadillac and welcome to Formula One, because it is no mean feat to put together a Formula One team, put together all the individuals that have never worked together, actually have a beautiful garage layout, which is what they've got, and a car that's running out on track, a couple of gremlins. In terms of absolute pace, they aren't the fastest car. You know, they are towards the back, if not kind of some of the slower laps we've seen. They did what looked like a bit of a race simulation today, and they're running around 4 seconds-ish off the pace of the Ferrari, which today looked like the benchmark in those conditions. So a little bit slower, but could be running in a safe mode, could be running in, which means they're running slightly slower. But all in all, the headline for me is well done Cadillac and welcome to Formula One.
Yeah, they're going to look respectable, I think, for the first race. Now, ultimately, I think when they got the full confirmation was only a year ago, I think that's what they will have wanted. They wouldn't have wanted to be embarrassed when they came to the first race, and I think that's where they're at the minute.
Jolyon, what do you think from a driver's perspective? Have you got any sort of feelings? How are the drivers looking?
Fine. Everything's fine. Like Ruth said, really, they're a Formula One team. They're out on the circuit. They had a lot of small issues, but nothing went up in flames. And they've got carte blanche for the first races. New team. No one's expecting them to be anything but last. They might do better than that, but if they do, that would be brilliant. At some point, we'll start to judge them a little bit more harshly, but right now, carte blanche and two experienced drivers that will lead the way.
And they've always wanted their expectations, you know, keep the expectations low for now. Whilst we're on you, talk to us about Alpine, because they have been looking pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're quite happy. They are happy being dark horses, but I think they might be a little bit more than that with the way that they've run through testing. Car looks good on circuit. Looks like it's got a really sharp front end. And Mercedes tie-up, I think, is the big thing for them. Power units are the conversation around the paddock. Those with new ones are really dialing them in. Those that have changed power unit suppliers, customers, are trying to get that working relationship going, and that is Alpine with Mercedes. They will smooth that out and become more competitive. They will bring upgrades through the year, but I'm not expecting anything too soon from them. Solid from Alpine.
I think they made the biggest jump, actually, from last year into this year. They were obviously last year. In 2026, they decided to focus on heavily. They put all their resources into this. And I think just talking to the drivers, talking to Pierre, talking to Franco, they've already got a car that they quite like to drive now, which was not the case really for most of last year. So I think its early signs are really positive. And as long as they can kind of gel that relationship with Mercedes quickly, I think they should be in a really good spot.
And is there anything about that Alpine car that has stood out to you? Do you like what you see, Ruth?
I do, and I think they're right at the sharp end of the midfield, which is so great given kind of the performance they've had. And bearing in mind, this was a tactical choice. You know, they've said openly in the media, and everyone in the paddock has heard it, that they've basically put a lot of effort into this year's car at the detriment of both last year's car and the year before. It's 3 years in the making. Effectively, we saw a rather happy Flavio, which is a lesser spotted happy Flavio during some of the race simulations where they were really on point within a tenth of the fastest cars in the midfield.
Lawrence, on to Audi, the loudest car, possibly, I think my favourite noise. Would you agree?
They're definitely the one when they fire up, people jump in the paddock. So that's still happening even straight into testing.
I love on that. I spoke to Jonathan Wheatley today, and I said it on air on the coverage, but they were the first car to fire up and the first car to hit the track as well in the shakedown before Barcelona. And he was like, wow, these new 2026 cars sound amazing. And then it transpires that they sound different to everyone else. So it's very much a unique sound.
It's basically Audi's car that sounds amazing, right?
But they've done a really good job, yeah. I think with what they've delivered, this package looked really tidy. It turned a load of heads when they came to Bahrain testing last week. They changed it from the shakedown car, and they've kind of methodically worked and learned about it through this week. So while I don't think they made the kind of big step that they would have maybe hoped for and been right towards the top of the midfield, I think they're right in the thick of it. And I think for a new team, which was effectively what they are, even though they took over Sauber, and a new engine, the only one that are running that Audi engine this year, I think they've done a really good job.
It's so hard, isn't it, Ruth, when you've got a team. I know they took over Sauber, but they've got a lot of new things that they're having to get used to, a lot of people they're having to gel together, and that new engine as well. How hard is that to sort of adapt to, I guess?
Probably second only to kind of Cadillac and potentially even Aston in terms of changes in infrastructure. I would add to it, most individual smelling car too.
Oh.
And you're going to have to take this word by word for it if you're not here, but it smells very unique as well.
Like what?
Do you know what? I think it's got an undernote of synthetic net 30 fuel. It smells lovely.
So what a relatable reference.
What a relatable reference.
Went right over my head, I'll be honest.
But no, there's so many changes. Jonathan Wheatley knows exactly how to win, and he's spectacular at it. Someone else that knows how to win, who's just about to crash our entire post show, is Lando Norris. Is going to walk straight through it.
Hello.
Everyone
Just
likes a little bit of a big gate crash by a world champion, don't they? But yeah, Audi, work to do at the back of the pack, but not going to be fighting for championships this year. I think they changed their target, which was 2030, was the year they were kind of going for the championship.
I mean, it was very sensible to come in and say it's going to take a bit of time to win a championship, and Jonathan Wheatley, Mattia Binotto know how long it takes to win in Formula 1. So yeah, 5 years, 2030.
Room 101 is people talking about target years being like 5, 6, 10 years. Yes, it will take time for everyone. Not everyone can win in 2030 either.
Well, they've got to say something there, haven't they? They can't come in and we'll win at some point.
Well,
You just kick it down the road, don't you?
Ayo Komatsu, I spoke to him earlier, the team principal of Haas, and he said that, at this moment in time, they've got to be a bit cautious, but he's feeling pretty happy, Jolyon. Do you think that's fair?
Cock a hoot.
Justified?
Really happy. Spoke to him at the start of the week before we'd had these 3 days, and he was, thinking the Ferrari power unit, really, really enjoying the reliability of it, thinking the drivability was good as well. Drivers were both saying good things. Obviously, it's complex for everyone, but in the realm of complexity, he was very happy with what they had, and that's such a great groundwork for them to go about their business, which is what they did. Loads of laps every day, very few issues for Haas, and a little sprinkling of performance right at the end. I think they're probably one of the most satisfied teams of the grid, I'd say.
Do you agree with that, Ruth?
Yeah, I'd agree. They did a really good race simulation today with Ollie. Again, those times right up the top of that midfield, in and out there with kind of the others. Secondly, their garage turnarounds have become so much slick. And by that, I mean when you bring a car into the garage to change any kind of setup item to send it out, typically you do see that process happen faster, with the kind of established big four teams. And they're kind of one, because we track all these numbers because we're geeks, they were one of the slowest. And this test, they've been really on it. Spoke to AO, said good test. Everyone's saying good test, except for Ollie Behrman. And the only time I think he ever seemed like shocked was when he was describing standing behind the rear, or driving behind the rear wing of the Ferrari. When he saw it for the first time activate on track, the 270-degree Macarena, and he went, ooh, before going, ooh. But yeah, good test for Haas.
Lawrence, just quickly, do you sort of see Haas being at the front of that middle pack?
Yeah, I think they're vying for best of the rest with Alpine, I think, top of the midfield. I think what's really important is when Haas have had problems in recent years, because they're the smallest team in the field, it's taken them a little bit longer to understand what was going on, just because they haven't got as many people to look at a problem. So I think the very fact that they've started with this real good baseline that Jolyon was just talking about bodes well for that early part of the season. Then it's about doing what they did last year very successfully, which is build on that development. Last year was the first time we saw that really good in-season development from Haas. As long as they can do that, I think they're in a really good spot.
Okay, let's move on to Aston Martin. Jolyon, it's fair to say it has been a tricky testing for them, and they are definitely not where they want to be, are they?
No, tricky is kind for Aston Martin. 6 laps today, and every single day we've been doing this, we've been having to talk about Aston Martin, because you think it's bad on day one, and then it gets worse, and then it gets even worse. Miserable. Every aspect of their performance is not there. Power unit was late. Honda, they're on the back foot. They haven't got the power. They've not got the reliability. Chassis haven't got downforce either. The drivability is bad. Drivers are glum. The big long-term target, the 6-year plan is that they're going to turn it around, but it is going to take a long time for Aston. I believe they'll get there with the talent that they've got. They've just got to keep everyone chipper and not expect anything in the first races. Look towards even later on in the season, try and get something.
I think there's a really understanding in that team that it is going to be a really difficult start to the year. I talked to Pedro de la Rosa really early in this day, and they already were setting us up to say it was going to be a difficult day of running. They could only do short runs at the minute they were low on spare parts, kind of heading into the first race of the season. I think from a team perspective, it's disappointing that they got so few laps out of it. But I think they've always said that they needed time to kind of get this project up and running. I think they ended, 2.5 hours early. Today, Lance Stroll left the circuit, Adrian Newey left the circuit, because I think they just know that they've got a lot of work to do and there was nothing more that they could do here, and like head into Australia, where they are going to have updates on the car. I think just the package and, like Jolyon said, the difficulties they're having with Honda, that could be what's problematic in them learning about their overall package, because they can't get the laps on the board to start with to learn.
I know this is probably quite a difficult question for you, Ruth, but are there any positives for Aston Martin? Do you see them working this out, over the next few races?
Well, they've got resource, and one thing when you are on the back foot is, do you have a way, out of that environment? We've been here. Last time we've had big regulation changes. We've been here in 2016 when the teams that were 4 seconds off the pace, which is roughly where they look like, were teams like mine, where we just didn't have the cash or the resource to actually develop those parts. We certainly didn't have Adrian Newey. We didn't have, Honda that have come off of winning multiple championships.
Ooh, it's got a bit dark.
Do you know what? I love that. It's like I should have done something dramatic for that exact moment. They've got the resource to turn it around, and we always used to rank teams on happiness coming out of a test rather than performance. And the only benefit of being 10th out of 10th or 11 out of 11 in happiness is the only way is up.
Well, yes, the only way is up. Let's go on to Racing Bulls, because I feel like things are pretty positive over there. Lawrence Arvid Lindblad, he got the record most laps completed. I mean, that's pretty good going for a rookie as well.
I mean, incredible work. He already had more testing than a rookie normally gets heading into the season. He had a very smooth run of it, and almost 3 Grand Prix worth of race lap distance out there. Arvid's done a really good job, I think, throughout this test. I was talking to Alan Permain, and he was just saying how impressed. You only have to tell him once and he'll learn that lesson, and he's kind of done everything that they wanted him to do. And for a rookie heading into a season, he's probably the best prepared that any of them have been in the last couple of years.
Ruth, do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Really solid. They didn't really do much high fuel running until the last couple of days. But we did see the race simulation today about a tenth slower than Ollie Behrman's Haas, which we're putting towards the front of the field. So actually, in my expectations, they took a step forward in terms of performance, because they were one of my question marks in terms of where they sat in the midfield. I think they're going to be looking at Melbourne as an opportunity to, maybe sneak into the points.
And remember, that was with a rookie at the wheel. I was trackside watching Arvid pumping the laps. He was really consistent. He looked really good. The car looked nice. The Red Bull power unit in the back is obviously doing a good job as well. So I think they've had a decent run. Not setting any headlines, but I think they'll be quite happy with what's gone on.
I think they recovered well, because they went under the radar last week. They were the ones who were having the Red Bull Ford power engine issues last week, and they've recovered really well. And so when they started to chase performance, I think it started to come through this week. So maybe they call them a dark horse. I don't know how many dark horses we can have, but to be honest, they were up the sharp end of the midfield as well, kind of chipping away at Haas and Alpine.
Okay, so maybe not quite as happy, Jolyon, is Williams. They, of course, finished P5 last season, which was pretty good going. James Vowles has sort of wanted to build towards 2026 for a while. Where would you rank them?
Not very high. I'm disappointed for the team, actually, and for the drivers, because I think they've got a really strong driver lineup that we saw last year. And, I mean, we spoke about Alpine turning off the taps last year, but we documented for a long time last year how Williams were switching resource to this year. And the big thing for them is that they are so overweight with the car, and that is just instant lap time. If you were on the limit, there'd be a huge chunk, but there are various other teams that are also searching to shift some kilos. But I think Williams is the most dramatic of all. The car looks fine out on circuit. It's not doing anything particularly nasty. I think they've dialed it in a lot better from the start of the week. Remember, they didn't even turn up to Barcelona, so they're on the learning curve, but they're racking the miles, they're doing okay. They will shave weight off it, but from 5th place, they were looking to get towards the top 4, and they're not even going to be 5th place as things stand.
I think this is the frustration, that they were hoping to make that kind of big step this year, because this is where they've put all their resource, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that. They're essentially going to be playing catch up. Alex Albon was saying they haven't made up any of the ground, really, that they lost for not being in the Barcelona testing, and that's going to hurt, because I don't think you can catch that up that quickly. You get a couple of hours each weekend, a race weekend, to learn about the car in practice, and you just can't make up days worth of testing.
Drivers are disappointed, I think, at Williams, just because they had so much promise, and the direction of the team for the last few years, maybe, they'll be able to turn it around. The development race this year is going to change things. So as we say this here, we could get clipped up in 8 months' time and they are now flying and getting podiums again. But just feels like there's a lot of work for them.
And their experience will help, though. So the benefit for Williams is Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon's experience will help them make that development quicker. It's not like they've got a rookie in one of the cars. They've got a really good barometer to work off, I think, in these early few races.
Okay, let's move on to the top 4 then. Everyone's saying they're in the top 4. Ruth, Ferrari, they're looking good. They're looking very good.
Well, when they put their right foot in, they put their right foot out. They shook it up. It's a Macarena, isn't it? They're doing some kind of Macarena hokey cokey.
That's the hokey cokey.
Okay, well, I'm getting my dance moves mixed
like
up.
this.
But they're not getting anything mixed up down there. We know that the house of Ferrari always turns the wick up statistically more than their direct competitors in the Mercedes power units and in the kind of the Rebel kind of gang. So we do know that normally they do fall back a little bit between testing. But that having been said, there's nothing better than to do a great first test. Fred nearly cracked a smile, which, that for Fred is, he's my old boss. That's pretty good. He was joking around. Some great novel aero innovations, solid lap times. They're certainly in that top 4 pack. I'm not sure if I put them P1, but they're up there.
Lawrence, you spoke to Fred, didn't you? Just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, he was trying to keep his counsel, to be honest, because I didn't want to get too far ahead of himself. I was expecting to see more of a jovial Fred Vasseur, and we didn't quite get there. I don't know what that symbolises for Fred and Ferrari's hopes, but with the lights coming back on. But look, I think they're right in the mix, like Ruth said. I don't think they're the fastest, but I think they're right there with Mercedes. And frankly, where they were last year, how they finished the end of last year in P4 off the top 4, I think they'll be very happy with that, because I think what they've got is a really good foundation to work with. And when I was in the box with Jolyon and we were watching Charles kind of build up those laps, it looks like they've got something to work with, and I think frankly that's all Charles and Lewis will have wanted heading into this year.
Well, Charles Leclerc set the fastest lap of the whole of testing, Jolyon. Earlier, this morning you said that Ferrari would probably be the car that you'd pick to drive. Do you still stand by that?
Hey, I said between Ferrari and Mercedes, and I stand by that. But it was a lot of fun. Thanks to Ferrari for going for quali sims at the end, because it was really enjoyable calling that. And seeing Charles drive a really animated car, it's exactly where he wants it, I think. The cars are nimble. He's got it dancing with the rear end a little loose, trying to fine-tune the last details through loads of C3s and C4s. I think it was quali sim time. I'm sure they've taken fuel out. I'm sure they've turned the wick up. They were trying to set as fast a time as they can, which is why they've got a golf to anyone else. But yeah, the car looks good, and Charles very happy. And I love the innovation. I mean, hey, the flipping wing we've done already, but that's incredible. Some of the other detail on the car is good. The reliability has been, by and large, pretty strong. Charles had the cleaner running than Lewis. I think he's also looked more comfortable in the car than Lewis. But it can change. This is always a good track for him too.
Well, all the chat in the paddock is that Red Bull are definitely in that top 4, maybe not that top 2 spot, Lawrence. You've spoken to both of the drivers, Isaac Hadjar and Max Verstappen. What vibe do you get from them?
Well, from Hadjar, he was pretty disappointed. He's barely got any running, frankly, across these 2 tests. I think he kind of lost 2 days almost of his 3 days of running. But I think even with what he's got, he was pretty happy with what he's learned about. He cycled through a load of test items, feels like he's got a real good feel for the car underneath him. I think the fact that the Red Bull power unit's been so reliable is really good for the running he was able to get under his belt. And then basically every time Max has got in the car, it's looked very strong. He's the one who's got the high mileage across the whole weekend. I think he's very happy. I know he hasn't spoken so eloquently about the 2026 cars, but I think the package he's got, I think he's very happy with. I think he feels like he can get a lot out of it. And talking to some people in the team, senior members of the team, I think the feedback's been very, very encouraging. I don't think they're the top 2 teams, but they're in the mix. And I think for a team that's running a new Red Bull power unit that was only created 3.5 years ago, I think that's a very, very good job from that team.
Yeah, and I think we can't forget that, it was all doom and gloom. Max Verstappen's going to be forced to leave Red Bull, and he's going to have to find a seat in another team if he ever wants to win a race or a championship ever again, was some of the narrative last year, because everybody in the paddock, potentially even some people within Red Bull, were expecting that power unit to be, off the pace in a way that we've seen some of the other new power units be there. So first off, I think we say really well done to them, because to be having a question mark or are they fastest is in of itself very different to what we all thought, I think, about 6 months ago, probably including Max himself. I love their spatula, and I think not enough has been said.
What do you mean by that?
They have a beautiful spatula. It looks like a spatula, rear front wing adjustment. They've got some really novel aero designs. It's not as, it's not as out there as the Macarena rear wing that's flipping 270 degrees, but the upgrades they brought this week show some really clever aerodynamic thinking, which is about giving the drivers a stable platform rather than absolute maximum downforce. They've got a fancy kind of inlet basically to try and stop having turbulent flow go under the car. And Max looks solid. So I think if they're not, not the fastest, they're much happier. Expectation management.
Slightly concerned for Isaac, on the other hand, because Max looks solid. Max got the lion's share of the mileage. Both absolutely true. Isaac, we've seen this story quite a few times with that Red Bull second seat.
Loads of times.
Inexperienced driver. It's a well-trodden path, isn't it? Second driver gets, just unfortunately, not the rub of the green. So had not a great day in the car. I think it was 66 laps was his total mileage yesterday on his final full day. Had a problem last week as well that cost him miles. He's the driver that needs more if he's going to get onto terms with Max. We know how good Max is. We think this will probably suit his driving style more as well. Hopefully Isaac's got the talent to bail himself out in Melbourne. And he proved last year Melbourne doesn't set the tone for the whole year as well. But feels like he's had a slightly rougher run of it.
That's actually a really good point, Lawrence, because I think we came into testing thinking that Red Bull were going to try and level out the amount of attention they give to, Max and that second Red Bull seat. Maybe it hasn't quite worked out like that.
Well, I just think that it's unfortunate, like Jolyon said, that Isaac hasn't had the laps to find out whether or not he's going to be as comfortable as he could be in that car. I think when Laurent Mekies came on board, he's created this different atmosphere, but I think there was a desire to maybe pull it away from being a Max-specific car that suits him. Whether or not it develops back in that direction, we don't know. But I think the idea was to try and bring a bit more balance, to give a bit more comfort to the guy who comes in that second seat. But look, we've talked a lot in this pre-season about Isaac Hadjar's confidence, and I think he's shown throughout. I know Jolyon doesn't like it when I talk about this, but I just think that he's gone in and he's not getting bogged down by the second seat chatter. I think he's just cracking on with it, and it doesn't seem to be phasing him. And let's see whether or not that confidence is rewarded when he heads to Australia.
But also naturally, you're completely right. Isaac's got a great mentality, quite a feisty one, but he is capable of knuckling down and ignoring the noise. Naturally, if you're Red Bull now heading to the first race, you're going to take a steer from Max's feedback. You would anyway. He's a four-time world champion, maybe the greatest ever. But this is why all the cars go towards Max, because he is the one that looks faster. So Isaac's not done the mileage either. So he's got to take a steer from Max, and hopefully he can drive whatever Red Bull give him. But this is why you get to this sort of position where Red Bull go towards Max's car, because he looks the stronger, and actually also he's had more laps here.
Okay, on to Mercedes then. They have looked mightily impressive, Ruth, and George Russell was fastest off the line today at the end of this final session. I mean, impressive.
Impressive. I mean, as strategists, we try to build our kind of conclusions based on data, based on numbers, based on very scientific error bars, taking into account, for example, the Mercedes didn't look like they were pushing that much on the straights, maybe have something in the pocket. If you look at the speed through the apices, all the different corners around the lap, you can see that potentially George is carrying a little bit more fuel than some of his direct competitors. But forget all of that. Just look at the happiest man in the paddock right now, and I think it is George Russell.
Yeah.
Maybe second is Kimi Antonelli, and maybe third for me is James Allison, because he was, of course, on the other side of the Mercedes the last time we had a big power unit battle or change in 2014. And I remember when he was technical director of Scuderia Ferrari, how that man looked at the end of the second test and how he looked today, and he looked a lot happier today.
Jolyon, how much did you like commentating on George Russell today? Because, I mean, the starts, it looking so good.
Well, to be honest, he started from pole and he just about held off Charles from fifth. So he was the first into the first corner. But I still think that they've got a little bit of work to do in that area. They frustrated me today because they didn't go for performance. I'm all about chucking it on, go for it at the end. But that speaks volumes. The car looks good. Reliability's been a little bit more questionable, so that's something hanging over them. And we're basically with Mercedes going off vibes, aren't we? We're thinking.
It's a vibe check.
That's always a good start.
Well, the car looks good, but they've just not shown anything. They did long runs last week. They've not done any race runs this week. Smacks of confidence that they don't need to go and do that. They've not done any quali sims at the end of the day. Smacks of confidence that they don't feel they need to go and show their hand. They were nowhere near it. So car looks good. Drivers so happy. Love everything about this year so far. So you have to feel that they have a little bit more in play.
Well, just quickly, Kimi, I don't think he's had a great run of it, to be honest. He's hardly had any laps relative to what George has had. So I think he's going in, talking to him in the press conference, kind of on the back foot. So, like, I think it's that and the reliability, which is the slight chink in the armour. George mentioned it again in the presser. Like, it's great that the car has looked good and that they are smiling, that they're happy, but they have had way too many niggles, really, through testing, and that's maybe why they're not getting too carried away.
And the starts. Because that's the other thing that George said to you in the presser was he's made 2 practice starts. This was before he just about held off Charles at the end of the day. 2 practice starts, and they were the worst starts he's ever done in a Formula One car. So that might be another little area that the rivals can
Although
look at.
slight exaggeration, surely. I'm sure he's done some pretty horrific starts if we go back through the archives.
They've been bad though, until the last one where he managed to. They're all working on it and improving.
Yeah.
But they're not infallible.
Maybe I'm getting overly influenced by all the chat in the paddock about Mercedes being favourites. Maybe that's
No,
it.
I think they are.
You saying
But just purely based on the confidence. The car looks good. The car looks good, but they're not setting headline times. They're not setting amazing race runs because they're not trying to. Everyone else is trying to do some race runs, trying to do some low fuel runs, and almost the fact that everyone's so happy and they're not trying makes you feel like they've got something at the stage. And they've been great from the first time they put the car on the ground in Barca.
Well, we'll see what they're made of in Melbourne. Let's finish with the world champions then. McLaren, Lawrence Lando's over there on his phone over your shoulder. Where are you putting McLaren in the pecking order roughly? Because, I mean, they've sort of gone under the radar, I think.
I reckon if you ask them, they're going to put themselves 4th of those 4. I think they're probably 3rd, maybe just above Red Bull, maybe chipping away now at Mercedes and Ferrari ahead. I think they've had a really good upward curve through this test. I think they started maybe under the radar, like you said, Betty, and then they've really picked up in the last couple of days. Just talking to Oscar actually earlier today, I think they've made some real breakthroughs, not breakthrough to be fastest, but breakthrough in the understanding of their cars. And I think that's going to be the key this year, is how quickly you can make those breakthroughs with these new cars and make those right decisions on which way you're going to go with development, which way you're going to go with setup each weekend. So I think they're significantly happier, frankly, McLaren, at the end of this test and at the start, but I still think they've got some work to do.
Could be dark horses.
Oh, we've got so many dark horses.
I'm going to chuck them in. Okay, the horses are Ferrari and Mercedes.
Okay,
the dark horses for me are McLaren. Their starts today were transformed. Lando absolutely flew off the line on that last one, which was a serious concern before that. Didn't run anything softer than a C3 and was close to Charles at the time that he ran it. We can't read too much into the times, but the car also looks really good. Lando seems to be, like Charles, very happy dealing with it on the edge of oversteer. Oscar tends to want a little bit more of a settled rear end, so there's looked to be a difference in the balance when they were swapping between the two drivers. I think they look good. They're playing everything really down, but they always do. So I think McLaren are closer than it might seem.
Ask the man behind you.
Yeah, I know, we could just ask him. But I agree. I think it is close to that kind of P3-ish area. Oscar did a race simulation yesterday. One thing that was interesting is in the last era of cars, McLaren had a real degradation advantage over a lot of their competitors. So they were able to kind of extend and have good pace across a race stint. And we didn't see that yesterday. So depending on how you look at the race simulation that was between Oscar and Max, you could conclude that either of them was faster, but actually the McLaren had slightly higher degradation than the Red Bull. And in terms of the actual performance, I think it's all relative, isn't it? If you come off the back of winning everything, 2 constructors, 1 Drivers' World Championship, you're going to be upset with second. If you come off the back of being anything else other than that moving forward. And I think, it is tough being a customer as well. If you're a manufacturer team, especially in these very, very early moments of a kind of regulation, you've got one less link in terms of communication with optimization to deal with. So there is that element too, just in terms of getting to grips with it. If it's people in your own company, rather than kind of having to talk to somebody else in the way, it does make a difference. But, he doesn't look that sad, does he? He's kind of like, he's got his dinner, he's pretty happy.
The live vibe check.
The live vibe check.
He's not crying.
We'll give him an 8 out of 10 on vibes. He's not running away from a camera, which is usually the sign from a Formula One driver when they're upset.
His engineering team already left, so.
Well, with burgers as well, I was getting distracted. distracted by the amount of burgers they were carrying out of there. Just very quickly, Jolyon, do you think McLaren are going to be thinking about the fact they're world champions? Because I heard Andreas Stella earlier saying that they climbed Mount Everest and now they're back down right at the bottom.
I don't think they're going to think about it or care about it. They've enjoyed that. New regs, it counts for absolutely nothing apart from they've got the first garage, which will be a slight advantage in the pit stops. It's all to play for. It's a blank slate.
Okay, right. Let's put it in a really quick pecking order. Jolyon, where are you going?
11 Aston Martin,
Okay.
Ooh.
10 Cadillac, 9 Williams, 8 Audi, slightly controversial 7 Alpine, which would probably be lower than you guys would have them.
Yeah.
But I fancy Racing Bulls to pit them to 6th. I think Haas looks safe in 5th. Let's go Red Bull 4, McLaren 3, Ferrari 2, Mercedes 1. Tight.
Do you agree?
Pretty similar. I'd probably flip Cadillac and Aston Martin. I'd probably flip Alpine and Racing Bulls. But yeah, I think I'm pretty much with you for the rest of it.
So
which
hard
doesn't
to
happen very often, Jane. So yeah.
That's a good start. Go on, Ruth.
exactly.
Yeah, I've got to wait for Lando to get out of earshot before I put where McLaren are.
He just said,
just
be
shouted,
careful.
P1, obviously. Yeah, no, I think it's really similar. But that's great, isn't it? That we're all disagreeing. We've got the data. Our current world champion is disagreeing. And he's got his own data set. Just going to have to turn up to Melbourne to see who ends up on front.
Yeah, let's be honest, this pecking order is going to be all over the place when Melbourne comes around. Thank you so much for joining us for pre-season testing in Bahrain. It has been great fun, hasn't it, guys?
Oh, it's been great.
Loved it. Yeah.
Well, tell your face that, Jolyon. Of course.
It never does more than a smirk.
7 out of 10 on the vibe
You should have
check.
seen me in the booth in the last 30 minutes. Loved it.
Loved it. All right, perfect. Thank you very much, guys. And look, the countdown is on. Melbourne, fast approaching. We'll see you there.